The days that followed the strange incident at the cemetery were anything but ordinary for Benjamin and Samuel. Although the glow and tapping at the grave had vanished, the memory lingered like an unshakable shadow. Samuel grew quieter, his once bright demeanor dulled by fear, while Benjamin became increasingly determined to uncover the truth. Whatever had happened that night, he was convinced it was a message, a cry for help from his mother. One afternoon, while walking back from school, Benjamin noticed a man standing at the edge of the cemetery. He was tall and cloaked in a tattered coat, his face partially obscured by a wide-brimmed hat. The man seemed to be watching him, unmoving, like a statue. Benjamin slowed his pace, unease creeping into his chest. "Who is that?" Samuel asked, his voice low. "I don't know," Benjamin replied, glancing at his friend. "Let's find out." As they approached, the man turned and walked away, disappearing into the dense forest bordering the cemetery. Benjamin hesitated for a moment before following, his curiosity overriding his fear. "Wait. What are you doing?" Samuel whispered harshly, grabbing Benjamin's arm. "He might know something," Benjamin said. "I need answers, Sam." Reluctantly, Samuel followed. The forest was eerily silent, the only sound being the crunch of leaves underfoot. After a few minutes, they lost sight of the man. Instead, they found themselves standing in front of an old, abandoned church, its wooden door hanging off its hinges. "Do you think he went in there?" Samuel asked, his voice trembling. Benjamin nodded. "There's only one way to find out." Inside, the air was damp, and the faint scent of mildew hung heavy. The pews were overturned, and shards of broken stained glass littered the floor. At the center of the altar was a book, its leather cover cracked and worn. Benjamin approached it cautiously, his fingers brushing the edges. The pages were filled with symbols and writing in a language he couldn't understand. "What is this?" Samuel asked, peering over his shoulder. "I don't know," Benjamin replied. "But it doesn't feel right." Before they could examine it further, the door slammed shut behind them. The boys jumped, their hearts racing as a low, gravelly voice echoed through the church. "You shouldn't have come here." They spun around to see the man from earlier standing in the shadows. His eyes glinted like cold steel, and a sinister smirk played on his lips. "Who are you?" Benjamin demanded, his voice trembling but firm. The man stepped closer, his boots clicking against the floor. "Someone who knows more about your past than you do, boy." Benjamin's breath caught in his throat. "What do you mean?" The man chuckled darkly. "You think your mother's spirit is at peace? Think again. She's caught between worlds, trapped by the choices she made, and by the choices you're yet to make." "What are you talking about?" Benjamin's voice rose, panic creeping in. The man ignored his question, instead pointing to the book. "If you want to free her, you need that. But be warned, the path you're about to take will demand more from you than you can imagine." The man turned abruptly and vanished into the shadows, leaving the boys alone in the eerie silence. Samuel grabbed Benjamin's arm. "We need to leave. Now." But Benjamin's gaze was fixed on the book. Whatever it was, it held answers he desperately needed. He tucked it under his arm, ignoring Samuel's protest, and they hurried out of the church. Back at the cemetery, the book became an obsession for Benjamin. He spent hours poring over its pages, trying to decipher the cryptic text. Meanwhile, Samuel grew increasingly uneasy, urging Benjamin to leave it alone. "This isn't right," Samuel said one night as they sat by the fire. "That man, whoever he was, wasn't trying to help us. He was warning us." Benjamin shook his head. "I can't stop now. If there's even a chance I can help my mother, I have to take it." But the more Benjamin delved into the book, the stranger things became. Shadows seemed to move on their own, and whispers filled the air when the wind was still. Samuel, once a steadfast companion, began to pull away, his fear overtaking his loyalty. Then, one fateful night, Benjamin made a breakthrough. As he traced his fingers over a particular symbol, the book seemed to come alive. The pages glowed faintly, and the air around him grew heavy. Suddenly, a voice, soft yet commanding, echoed in his mind. "Benjamin." He froze, his heart pounding. "Mama." Beware, they are coming. The glow faded, and the book fell silent. Benjamin stared at it, his hands trembling. What had he just unleashed? The next morning, Samuel was gone. His makeshift tent was empty, and there was no sign of him anywhere in the cemetery. Panic set in as Benjamin searched, calling his friend's name. He finally found a note scrawled on a scrap of paper near the fire pit. I'm sorry, Benjamin. I can't do this anymore. I'm going somewhere safe. Please be careful. Benjamin's heart sank. He felt the weight of loneliness return, heavier than ever. But there was no time to grieve. That evening, as he sat alone by the fire, he heard footsteps approaching. Turning quickly, he saw a group of villagers armed with torches and sticks. There he is, one of them shouted. The boy with the cursed book. Benjamin's eyes widened. Wait. I can explain. But they didn't listen. The mob surged forward, their faces twisted with fear and anger. Benjamin grabbed the book and ran, his heart pounding as he weaved through the gravestones. As he reached the edge of the cemetery, a blinding light erupted from the book, stopping the villagers in their tracks. Benjamin stumbled, falling to his knees as a figure emerged from the light, a woman with a kind yet sorrowful expression. Mama, he whispered, tears streaming down his face. The figure nodded, her voice echoing in his mind. You've come so far, my son. But your journey is only beginning. Before Benjamin could respond, the light vanished, and so did the figure. The villagers stood frozen, their fear replaced with confusion. Benjamin clutched the book tightly, his resolve hardening. Whatever lay ahead, he would face it. For his mother. For Samuel. For himself. The villagers dispersed slowly, their fear outweighing their curiosity. They muttered among themselves, casting wary glances back at Benjamin as they disappeared into the night. Benjamin stood alone at the edge of the cemetery, his heart heavy with unanswered questions. The book in his hands felt heavier now, its secrets both a blessing and a curse. That night, Benjamin didn't sleep. He stayed by the fire, staring at the flickering flames and clutching the book to his chest. His mind raced with thoughts of Samuel, his mother's ghostly appearance, and the cryptic warning she had given him. They are coming. Who were they? And why was he at the center of it all? The next morning, Benjamin decided he couldn't stay in the cemetery any longer. The villagers' growing suspicion and the strange occurrences were becoming too much to bear. He packed what little he had, his schoolbooks, a few scraps of food, and the mysterious book, and set off toward the outskirts of the village, where an old abandoned quarry lay. It wasn't much, but it was hidden, and he needed time to think. As he walked, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. The hair on the back of his neck stood on end, and every rustle of the wind made him glance over his shoulder. Finally, he stopped and called out, "If someone's there, show yourself." To his surprise, a familiar figure stepped out from behind a tree. "It's just me," Samuel said, his face pale but resolute. "Samuel." Relief washed over Benjamin as he rushed to his friend. "Why'd you leave?" "I thought." "I was scared," Samuel interrupted, his voice shaking. "But I couldn't leave you alone. Not with everything that's happening." Benjamin smiled faintly, grateful for his friend's loyalty. "I'm glad you came back. I need your help." Samuel nodded, his fear overshadowed by determination. "What's the plan?" The two boys settled at the quarry, working together to build a small shelter. Samuel, ever resourceful, managed to find scraps of wood and tarps left behind by workers years ago. They fashioned a crude but steady tent, hidden from view by tall rocks and overgrown bushes. That evening, as they sat around a small fire, Benjamin opened the book again. "There has to be more in here," he said, running his fingers over the pages. "Something that explains what's happening." Samuel watched uneasily. "Are you sure that's a good idea?" "That thing, it's not normal, Benjamin." "I know," Benjamin replied, his voice firm. "But if it can help me save my mother, I have to try." Hours passed as Benjamin pored over the strange symbols and writings. Finally, he stumbled upon a passage that seemed to shimmer under the firelight. The words, though foreign, seemed to rearrange themselves in his mind until they became clear. The key lies not in the past, but in the choices of the present. Beware the one who hides in plain sight, for they will lead you to your fate. Benjamin frowned, reading the passage aloud. Samuel's face darkened. What does that mean? I don't know, Benjamin admitted. But it sounds like a warning. Before they could discuss it further, a loud crack echoed through the quarry. Both boys jumped to their feet, their eyes scanning the darkness. What was that? Samuel whispered, his voice trembling. I don't know, Benjamin said, clutching the book tightly. Stay close. They crept toward the sound, their footsteps silent on the rocky ground. As they rounded a corner, they saw a figure standing near the edge of the quarry. It was the same man from the cemetery, his white-brimmed hat casting a shadow over his face. You again, Benjamin said, his voice steady despite the fear curling in his chest. What do you want? The man turned slowly, his expression unreadable. I warned you, boy. The path you're on is dangerous. Then help me. Benjamin shouted, frustration bubbling to the surface. Tell me what I need to do. The man shook his head. Some truths must be discovered, not told. But know this, the choices you make will determine more than just your fate. They will decide the fate of all who came before you, and all who will come after. Before Benjamin could respond, the man vanished into the darkness, leaving behind only the echo of his words. As the days turned into weeks, strange things continued to happen. The book seemed to grow more powerful, its pages revealing new passages each time Benjamin opened it. Samuel grew more uneasy, warning Benjamin to leave it alone. But Benjamin couldn't stop. He was convinced the answers he sought were within the book's pages. Then one night, everything changed. As Benjamin and Samuel sat by the fire, a sudden gust of wind extinguished the flames. The darkness was immediate and suffocating. Before they could react, a figure emerged from the shadows. It wasn't the man from before, it was someone else. A woman, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark. You've opened the door, she said, her voice cold and accusing. And now they are coming. Who are you? Benjamin asked, his voice trembling. The woman stepped closer, her gaze piercing. I am the guardian of the veil between worlds. You have disrupted the balance, boy. And now you must fix it. I don't understand. Benjamin cried. I just want to save my mother. The woman's expression softened slightly, but her voice remained firm. To save her, you must confront the truth. But be warned, the truth is not what you think it is. Before Benjamin could ask what she meant, the ground beneath them began to shake. The air grew heavy, and an otherworldly roar echoed through the quarry. The woman's eyes widened. They are here. Who? Samuel shouted, his voice panicked. Who's here? The woman turned to Benjamin, her gaze urgent. Run. Take the book and run. It's the only way to survive. But before they could move, a tear appeared in the air, as if reality itself was splitting apart. From the rift emerged shadowy figures, their forms shifting and riding like smoke. Benjamin clutched the book tightly, his mind racing. What do we do? He asked the woman. Fight, she said, her voice steely. Or everything you love will be lost. To be continued.